Hello, and welcome to this edition of my podcast here, where we're going to be breaking down what I personally feel were my top 10 most scary moments in a video game. So, we're gearing up here for Halloween, which is right around the corner as of the day of this recording. That's tomorrow. So, I thought it'd be fun to revisit some moments in video games that definitely, gave me either a jump scare or something that kind of psychologically mess with my mind. There has been a lot of great, scary games out there, and I mean, really, once video games started becoming a little bit more cinematic and all, is where it's one area that I feel that video games really benefited from, right? As the technology got improved, that it was able to provide a more immersive, frightening experience than previous generations could, right? Because the technology just wasn't there to make things more scary. But so these are just my personal moments of times that definitely gave me some fright in a video game, and some of these are because there's the very obvious ones, right? And that I think that all of us can remember when we first played a certain game, like for example, Resident Evil. Maybe the first time we saw that zombie when we turned that corner in the hallway, or the dog that jumped out of the window. Those were definitely, I'll admit, I kind of jumped at those moments there when I first played the game. But these are just my personal moments and all that. And some of them were just moments in games that maybe weren't intentionally to be really creepy. It's just the way they played out. And maybe if it was just the environment that was in and all that made it really scary. So, for example, those two moments in Resident Evil aren't on my list here, but there is another moment from that game that is. So you'll kind of see what I'm saying here. But some of them are also games or moments that I feel like that are kind of the more popular ones, I guess, and all. So these are kind of in order. I put them in. I ranked them out, and also these are more or less in order and all. But the one that's on my number one is definitely the more frightening moment for me that I've played in a game. So there's still a lot of games that I haven't played that are horror games. So for example, I haven't played the Alien Isolation all the way through. I haven't played like the Evil Within 2 or the Amnesia games or the Outlast games, and those are games that I've heard that are really creepy. I just haven't gotten around to those there yet. But but hopefully you'll be able to find this at least entertaining to listen to as we're approaching the Halloween season here. So starting with number 10, it's this happened in a GameCube game. So it's a game that's a bit of a has a cult following, and I really wish they would re-release it at the very least, on the Nintendo Switch Online service that they have. But that is Eternal Darkness, and so this game is a trip. So this game came out in I think it would have been 2002, was developed by Silicon Knights and was a GameCube exclusive. It hasn't been re-released anywhere else since, as far as I'm aware of. And it was pretty well regarded when it came out. And it was very unique in that, for a few different reasons. One of them is that you play as the lead character. So she's a woman that's in a mansion and trying to uncover certain secrets, but you don't always play her though. As you're going through the mansion, you eventually end up taking control of another character as I believe she's reading through some books and all. So then you kind of go into the past, right, and all to play out a certain event that plays out that ultimately ties to modern time stuff. Honestly, I don't remember the story, a whole lot of it. I beat it once back in when it first came out. So again, this would have been back in 2002. So a lot of the game I don't remember, like the story, the overall, plot and everything. But I do remember liking it. But there's one particular moment though that it really frightened me. And again, it was one of those things that, again, maybe it was just because I had the lights off and everything, and I just wasn't expecting it. And also, maybe this is something that maybe didn't scare anybody. Because I think one of the main things that scares people from this game is the unpredictability of it, of how the game kind of messes with you. And I don't want to spoil too much and all if you haven't played the game and all. So I think that's going to be kind of more of the common thing that freaks people out. But what freaked me out in this game though, so actually let me back up a little bit, since I'm doing this, some of the things I'm going to talk about here. I should have probably started off with this, and since I said earlier that I wasn't going to do that, I didn't want to spoil anything. But no, actually, let me take that back. There's a lot of things I'm gonna talk about here are gonna be very spoiler heavy on some scenarios. So if you haven't played some of these games and all, then maybe come back and listen to this once you played some of these games here. But yeah, so sorry about that, but I will be spoiling some things. So in this one here. So I had to look it up a little bit just to refresh my memory on where this happened and all. But basically, it's in chapter 3 where you take control of a character named Anthony. So what I recall is that you're playing, I don't know, you're like a squire of some sort, kind of in the medieval ages, and so you're going through a section to, whatever you're doing in the game as far as the plot goes. But what I wasn't noticing though was as you're going through this section of the game, Anthony's physical appearance is changing because of whatever is whatever is he's going through right and all that is starting to transform him into whatever evil is taking over him. And I wasn't really paying attention to that though. Maybe that might have been just because I was playing on a smaller TV and a little far away from the TV, and also I wasn't maybe paying attention to it at all. But what I recall though was that at one point towards the end of this chapter, so the game is split up into chapters that you control in most, I think, a different character in these chapters. So towards the end of this chapter, I end up like opening a door, and then all of a sudden it cuts to like this cutscene, and you see his face right up close as he encounters some other, I don't know, creatures or characters, I don't quite recall. But the look on his face is very ghastly like, and it's like, I mean, it's very like, looks like a zombie, like a skeleton or so, and he kind of like falls down, and the whole time I'm like, oh my god, what just happened to him? Because and again, I wasn't really paying attention that he was transforming, because in retrospect when I look back, I think it gives you clues, right, that he's becoming weaker, he's getting possessed of some sort. And so anyway, but his face just kind of like comes right up to the screen and all, and he kind of like grabs his neck as he's like gasping for air and all, and he just falls down with his face is completely deformed and all. And that little brief moment there and all just really shocked me and like sent shivers down my spine and all, as I wasn't expecting it. And definitely one of the more moments in video games that really shocked me. Yeah, I'll admit I definitely got scared by that part there. But yeah, Eternal Darkness. It's a great game. I really wish they would re-release it. At the very least, definitely check it out if you're into emulation and all, because it's definitely worth playing. It's a really good one. But that one will come in at my number 10. For my number 9 is so Resident Evil, the original one on the PlayStation 1. So again, I already talked about the moment where you first see that zombie, right, eating on that one, your one of your I forgot, the Alpha Squad or whatever it is. But the part that scared me about this game here, and so again, now, I have to take myself back and all of that, right? And all of that again, we weren't really used to these kind of games. The only thing that had been kind of used that I had played that was kind of creepy was, let's see, so there was the Mansion of Hidden Souls on the Sega CD, which wasn't like scary, but it had a bit of like supernatural elements to it. So it was a bit immersive in the story and all that. That you're into in this place that has to deal with like spirits and things like that, which is actually a decent little game if you want like a story based game that's kind of creepy. But nothing. It wasn't too bad though, right? And then there was that game D. It was kind of like a full motion video game also. I don't remember if I played this before I played Resident Evil, but suffice to say, I hadn't really experienced anything too creepy in video games. And so I had gone through that scene, right, and all, again with the zombie, when you first encounter the zombie, and then the dog jumps out of the window. Yeah, they gave me like, oh, that was kind of creepy. But the part that gave me chills, and again, maybe it was just accidental, on how it all happened. But I was, so you're going through the game, right, and all, and roughly about maybe a little over halfway of the game or so, when you go back to the mansion. So after you've been through the garden section and all that, or the garden house, and then you go back to the mansion, and then those hunters are, in the mansion now. So one part that did kind of scare me was where you there's like the cinema of where it's like done in first person, where you see one of the hunters like going through the areas you just walked through, right, and it's like going right towards where you were at. So that part was kind of creepy. I do remember being a little creeped out by that part there. But what ended up scaring me more though was, so I'd already been aware that these hunters are in the mansion, and at one point I was in an area where close to, so the hallway that kind of goes around the area where you first get the shotgun at, where the ceiling comes down on you, the section where it's, the infamous Jill sandwich line. So in the hallway outside of that, and so I'm just kind of walking through, and all of a sudden I the screen shifts, right? It changes, and then I'm just kind of there. And I think, if I remember right, I think I had just kind of set the controller down. I think I don't know, maybe trying to taking a drink of something or something, and then all of a sudden I just see one of those hunters just slowly kind of like come into frame, and I looked up and I wasn't expecting it, and it just like made my blood curl. It just freaked me out so much. And again, it was just one of those things that I just wasn't expecting it, right? And all. And so I quickly picked up the controller, like, oh crap, here's one of those other things. I just do remember being really freaked out at that part right there. And again, it was sort of one of those accidental scares and all that. I don't think the game was trying to be too super creepy with that moment, at least not like where it was staged. It just, the how it all happened and all, and what I was doing in real time at the time, right, and all that just made it kind of creepy. But, but yeah, that was one of the first times that I do recall being really freaked out by something that happened in a video game. And ever since then, I was like, I kind of like this. But yeah, that would have been, oh geez, let's see. Resident Evil came out in 1996. I would have played it a little bit after it came out, so 1996 or 1997 or so, and that game. I mean, like I said, it's, when you look back at it on the first one, it still has a feel to it, though. And all, I definitely don't want people to think that this one is not worth going through, with the more updated remake that came out, which that one is excellent, but this one still has a bit of a feel to it and all that. I still recommend people go back and play this one. You can play it on the like, if you, I don't know if you can buy it individually, but I know that you can play it if you have like the PlayStation Plus subscription, or of course emulation. But yeah, that particular one is pretty good. Just don't get the, what is it, the DualShock version, I think, because there was a director's cut, and then I think there was a DualShock version. I think it's a DualShock version. I could be wrong on that. I'd have to look it up. But I know that one of them had just like really horrendous music. To just do a little bit of research on that. But I think the director's cut one is okay. It's a DualShock version, I think. But anyways, so what I have at my number 8, so it's the original Silent Hill on the PlayStation. And so for this here, it's where sound effects just kind of mess with your mind, because there's, if I recall, there's towards the end of the game, you're in this area, and you're kind of going through these rooms, and when you enter into these rooms, all of a sudden you hear like these sound effects that are coming out, like something slamming or a door slamming, or just something, that sounds loud, like a loud bang, and you don't know where it's coming from. You're like, what the hell, is going on? But that's the thing; it's nothing there, and the game is just messing with you. And usually, when I play like scary games like this and all, I like playing it either with headphones or like on a loud sound system. And so I remember when I was first playing this game, because I enjoyed the sound effects a lot on it. I was, let's see, back then. I mean, I think I just had it hooked up to like a boom box of some sort, right? I mean, this would have been in 1999, so the surround sounds that we have nowadays weren't really a thing back then. But I had it hooked up, I believe, to like this boom box thing, and also, to try to make it sound as loud as possible. And yeah, I remember that those parts right there kind of freaked me out. But what cracks me up about this part here too, also, so this is not so much something. I mean, I was freaked out by those moments, right? And overall, the game is very, very creepy in a more psychological kind of way, though. But the part that I remember about this is not so much me being scared, but a buddy of mine. So I still kind of feel bad about this. But so a friend of mine who's not so much into, he wasn't so much into video games, but he was a good buddy of mine and all. So one day he came over to my parents' house at the time that I was living in, and so we were in my room playing the Silent Hill game. And so I got him to play it because he's not really into like scary stuff. He's actually, it's just not his thing. He doesn't like watching scary movies or anything like that. They freak him out. Um, but if somehow I convinced him to play this game, And I think we were in that section there that I was just talking about, right? Where you get like these loud bangs and all, and you're like, "What the hell is that coming from?" And so he was playing it, but he would only play it if I was there with him and we had the lights turned on, right? He wouldn't play it in the dark. So he's there playing it, and so in my room, so the way I had the TV set up, so the TV was on one end of the wall, on one wall, and then the way I had my chair set up that I would play video games on, it was right. Well, right behind that chair was my closet, and so I had told him I was like, hey, I'm just gonna go grab a snack or so. So he's like, okay. So I go out and into the living room and I go grab some snacks and I'll kind of BS with my parents for a little bit. And so then I remember telling because I had closed the door behind me right in the room, and I remember telling my parents I was like, hey, we're playing because I think my dad asked like, what are you guys doing in there? I was like, oh, we're just playing the scary game. I was like, hey, I'm gonna mess with them. I'm gonna try to scare him. And so I walk into, right before I walk into the room, I like kind of, I didn't like kick the door open right and all, but I kind of like, forced it open a little bit and just like yell like, bah, like that. My poor friend, he like he threw the controller in the air and he just like threw himself into the closet and closed the closet door. And you could have freaked him out so bad. And again, we had just been playing that section, right? Where you're hearing like these loud bangs and everything and all, you don't know where it's coming from and all. And yeah, he wasn't too happy with me after doing that. And I did feel kind of bad. Because again, like I said, right, I don't know, his scary things or anything is not his thing. I kind of convinced him to play this game for a little bit. I just freaked the shit out of him. But sorry, bud. But it was but it made for a fun scare though. But yeah, Silent Hill, great game though too. But number seven, so this is a more recent game. This is from the Resident Evil Village. And so when I was playing this game, I liked it. I was like, okay, it's definitely a different tone. It kind of gave off the vibe of like a monster horror, right? Where it doesn't have like the classic monsters in it, but it kind of felt like it. And then you're going through that section with I forgot what her name is, a tall vampire lady and all. And so I was like, okay, so it looks like you're fighting these different characters and they're sort of like monsters in a way and all, like, and there's werewolves in the game and all. And I don't know, I like the vibe of Resident Evil Village, right? Because it tries to feel like a monster movie in a way, and I do appreciate that. What I wasn't expecting though is that God, I beat the game once and all. I'm having a hard time sometimes remembering how the plot plays out, but somewhere, I don't know, roughly about halfway through the game, you end up in this one like house area where there's like a bunch of hallways. And again, I forgot what leads up to this and all, but the freaking baby monster thing or fetus or whatever the hell that thing was, that whole scene was scary. And because everything is, the hallways are very dark, and then once you get this weird, like I said, baby fetus looking thing kind of coming after you, making all these weird baby sounds, you're trying to run away from it and all, and hide in certain areas. I mean, it's definitely like in a nightmare, right, and all, where you feel like something's chasing you and you're trying to hide, and it can find you at any moment and all. That whole part right there was definitely scary. And after I played that section, I was like, okay, all right, good job, Resident Evil. You kind of brought the scare back in the series with this section here. And yeah, definitely one of the more disturbing, you know, boss fights or whatever. Because I don't think you fight it. I think you just run away from it and all until eventually you're able to escape it somehow. Like I said, I forgot exactly how it all plays out. I just remember being pretty frightened by that section there. And yeah, yeah, that's a pretty freaky section in that game there. Let's see. And so for my number six, what I have here is Dead Space 2, the eye scene. Now, this scene I think could be particularly disturbing for most anyone. I have this weird thing though where I have certain like I don't know, what do you call it? Like things that kind of like gross me out a bit. And it has to do anything that has to do with the eyes. Like for example, like I can't stand looking at someone like trying to put their contacts in. Like that disturbs me for some reason. It's like a weird thing that I have. And so you can imagine this scene, right? And all where you have to like so Again, this is another game that I beat it back in the day, when it first came out, which I think would have been 2010, 11 or so. I played it on the Xbox 360 and I really loved it. I love the first Dead Space and this Dead Space 2, almost like it maybe about as much or so, give or take. And towards the end of the game, you have to do something to your eye because you're trying to get past a certain spot. Like I said, I don't quite recall everything, but to do this though, you have to insert this needle. So there's like a machine, right? That's pushing like this needle down, uh, and it has to go right in the center of your pupil. But so you get this. So the scene is set up right where you're looking down on the main. What's his name? Isaac's, I think, his face, and so you're controlling this needle that's as you're maneuvering it down, but it kind of keeps swaying on you, so you have to use the analog stick, if I remember right, to try to keep it center. And then as it starts going more and more closer to your face, the camera starts zooming in closer onto your face. And so if you get it wrong, like if you get it anywhere outside of the right in the center of your pupil, the thing just kind of jams right into your eye, into a very gruesome like animation right and all, where obviously it kills Isaac and the main character. And so that part right there, I had a hell of a time playing because again, I'm so like weird about like even like something as simple as someone putting their contacts in your eyes. So you can only imagine, right? This whole scene right here, just it was a little rough to get through because I remember I kept messing it all up, and I'm like, God, man, I was like, I might need to have someone else play this scene for me. But I pushed through it and all until I finally was able to get it just right. But yeah, that's a very disturbing scene right there, though. But as much as it kind of makes me like gross out, I still kind of love it though. um, but number five. So this one, it's not so much that it's scary like a jump fright and all. It's just like the revelation of what's happening, and so that's for the Walking Dead season one. So this one right here, I think this is the more popular one, right, in the series that came out from Telltale Games. The season one, it was a really more powerful, impactful one. Just was what happens overall in the story and everything. It's great. This game is on my top 100 games of all time. I think it's just it's just an incredibly well told story and all that, and just the overall immersion that you get into it and all that. It's helped a lot by being a video game too. Also, I think is why I put it on my overall list there. It was just very impactful when I first played this game. One of the scenes though that happens in this game though, it's truly, I mean, it was like definitely like, oh wow, this is crazy, right? And all now when I played this game, it was around the time when we were getting to there was a lot of like zombie movie craze, zombie shows and all that, where, there were so many things out there that was like zombie related and all. So after a while, this scene right here, or, it was still kind of fresh. I mean, where I hadn't really seen something like this too much, where eventually a lot of it kind of things like this kind of got overplayed a lot, like in the Walking Dead show and some other video games and media and whatnot. So I still played it at a time where I hadn't really experienced too much of this kind of stuff. And so what I'm talking about is so in episode so excuse me. So in Walking Dead season 1, episode 2. So what happens in this episode is you're you know you were staying in this hotel area, but these raiders are starting to overrun the area though, so you have to ultimately try to find um, some other kind of like shelter of some sort. So you send out a team to go investigate, see if there's anything else, and as you're exploring the woodlands and whatnot, you come across some other people. Oh no, wait, or they come to your or to your area first, where the hotel is at, and they're offering that they can exchange gas for food or something like that. So you decide to take a team to go with these guys and all, where they live in an area where they have food and whatnot. So you follow them, and you end up in this house that looks pretty nice. It's like a farm and all, and the people there seem fairly pleasant and welcoming, and so seems like a nice family. It's I believe it's like two guys and then a mom, their mom, a bit of an older lady. Um, I believe it's the mom. Like I said, a lot of these games. It's been a minute since I played them, but anyway, so they seem really welcoming, and also then you decide to slowly start inviting some of your people over to this farm. And so they kept talking about like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make this really big dinner and all, and so just rest up and while dinner's ready. Now, let me back up a little bit. What ended up happening earlier in this episode is that you, the main character Lee, and someone else that was in your party were out hunting. But then this person, the guy you were with, he ends up getting shot, I believe. Yeah, he ends up getting injured or shot or something like that. So then the two guys that are from this farm, they decide to, they're going to help him out. They're going to get him all cured up and everything. So you end up on this farm and all that, right? And like I said, and so then they start talking about they're going to make this big dinner and all. But then as evening starts coming around, there's you're not quite sure where this guy is at. You're the buddy that you were with, and so eventually everyone's starting to sit down to eat, and they have meat on the plate, and so then you as a main character you start, like I said, I forgot how it plays out, but you start sensing that something is wrong, and so then you end up going upstairs. You sneak away from the dining table and you go upstairs, and then you find out that your friend has had his leg cut off, and that ultimately you end up finding out that what they were serving you was human flesh or human meat. Because oh yeah, because earlier than that, you end up in a barn, and then you find like this hidden door, or not a hidden door, but this room that was locked away, but you kind of take a peek inside and you find like all kinds of like, you know like just messed up stuff, right? Like, things that like blood everywhere and everything. So anyway, it's a bunch of things leading up and all that, right? That you're like, wait a minute, what is going on here? And then when you find the revelation that, your friend's leg was chopped off and everything, is that these people that you're with are cannibals and they're serving you human flesh and meat, part of it probably being from your friend that was shot earlier in the day. And so then the main character's like, stop eating, no, you're eating human meat. And then like the girl you're with, Clementine, she just like immediately puts the fork down, right, and all, and the whole thing, how it escalates and everything was just great. But just that revelation right there, you're like, oh my god, I can't, it's like the build up to that whole scene right there and all was truly shocking and kind of grotesque and all, right, of what's going on, and that these people, they seem really nice and everything, but they're actually cannibals. And yeah, it's a great moment, and definitely one of the better shock moments in a video game that I had experienced. And yeah, truly a great scene. Let's see. But for number four, I have Resident Evil 4 and when your head gets chopped off by the chainsaw dude. I think his name is Salvador. Resident Evil 4, it's definitely started going in a more action direction, right? Which, starting with Resident Evil 4, then eventually 5 and 6, that definitely were more action oriented. But Resident Evil 4, though, one of the things that I really loved about this game is that, yes, it is more action, but it still it wasn't like so much scary, but it definitely brought up the tension, though, right? Because of the third person camera perspective, and these, granados are, they're all over you and swarming you. So it's not necessarily like scary in a sense of like jump scare and all, or their designs aren't necessarily like grotesque and everything. It's just the tension, right, that it really builds up. And so I remember when I was playing the first section of the game, right, where you end up in that village, and then you start getting, there's a whole horde of like these granados that are all over the place and all. You end up in this house, and then this dude with a chainsaw comes out and everything. You're trying to get away, right, and all. And ultimately, it's timed, right, and all. You're not seeing how much time you have, but eventually, if you just kind of outlast them and all, then eventually, they end up going away. Yeah, when a church bell rings, but it takes a little bit though, right? And when you first play, you don't know that. So you're just trying to like survive. Like, how the hell am I going to get away from this? And so I remember the first time I played it, I'm trying to get away from all these guys. Like, holy crap, this is insane. Trying to go through all my resources, like my shotgun, bullets and, whatever grenades I had and all that. And so then at one point I ended up in this section where I think it was on, I was on the rooftop, and I was trying to fight away all these, granados, and I knew that the chainsaw guy was right around the corner. And I remember I just kind of turned around, and there he was, and he just chops my head off. And just a whole like shocking animation of how that all happens. I do remember being a bit like freaked out by that, like, oh damn, that was pretty graphic. But just the way it all happened, and so really not just the head chopping scene, but just that whole scene right there, it's still absolutely amazing, and definitely one of my favorite moments in a video game, especially especially the first time you play it. I mean, because you don't know like how much time you have, and it's definitely very intense, and so a different kind of way to frighten people, right? And not necessarily by like a jump scare, but just like being overwhelmed, right, by your enemy, and that it feels like you have no way out. And then with the looming danger that there's a crazy guy with a chainsaw that's about to chop your head off. But yeah, very excellent scene and all, and it was fun to play it too. Also in the remake version too, which is definitely. I mean, both Resident Evil 4, the original one, and the remake are excellent. I if you're wanting to get into Resident Evil games and for some reason you haven't played these, because I know there's some of the more popular ones, definitely check it out and definitely try both of them, because I feel like it's the same great game, just two different flavors. And I mean, the remake is great, but don't skip out on the original, right? I feel like the original is still really excellent too. Also, there's actually some things I prefer about the original over the remake. But either way, whichever one you get to, that scene right there, right, which is the end of the first little chapter or whatever it is, it's really tense, and yeah, it'll definitely give you some frights there. Uh, but yeah, but great scene. Let's see. So number three, I have The Evil Within, the initial escape scene. So The Evil Within. So here's another game that I beat it back when it roughly about when it first came out. Excuse me. So I don't remember a whole lot about it and all, but I do remember so initially when you so eventually, so you start off in the game, you end up in, I believe, in this hospital, and then everything goes to shit where it looks like you're in hell or some very grotesque kind of grindhouse looking messed up world. And so you're hanging, um, and while you see like these monsters of some sort, right, in this area that's all run down and very grimy and all, and so you eventually escape from where you're hanging from, and so now you're trying to sneak around, right, and all from these, if I remember right, they're kind of like these burning monsters or whatever they are. And so that right there's already pretty tense, right? And all, because you're like, holy crap, everything just looks disgusting and gross and everything. And you're trying to escape from these monsters and all. So that part right there is already pretty tense. But then eventually, when you finally break free from the area that you're captured in, and then you start running down these hallways and all, and you got these, I think it's those monsters that are chasing you and all. It's the way it's directed and everything and all. It's really intense, and then eventually I think like your leg gets hurt, and so you're kind of like crippling along to try to get to the end of this hallway, right, and all to escape these monsters. And just the way that whole scene is set up and everything, I just remember it being very tense and all that. And the game can be kind of difficult too, so that kind of definitely amps up the intimidation factor about the whole scene and all. But I just thought it was really great, and yeah, I mean that whole game is kind of messed up and all, and I really enjoyed it once I kind of got the hang of how to play through the game and all. But yeah, The Evil Within, that's a great game. I haven't played the sequel yet, but yeah, the first one though I feel is really excellent. Let's see. And so number two. So this is another scene also that I made it creepier by the way I was playing the game than maybe than the section was supposed to be. Now, The Last of Us, so I mean, it is, has definitely has some horror elements to it. So it's not like it's a, romp in the park kind of game. It's definitely has its scary moments and all. But there was an area though that I made it scarier for myself, and so that is with the clickers. So the clickers are pretty frightening, right? Don't get me wrong. I mean, they're definitely frightening. But there was this one section though, so it's not the first time you meet the clickers, but it's one of the first times though in a major playable section where you're dealing with a lot of them. But this is the area, so in the so you end up in those buildings where the buildings are kind of leaning over. So you're going through that whole section there. So you have some encounters there with the clickers, but then eventually you end up kind of going downward into this kind of underground subway area. And so you end up in this part where there's a bunch of clickers, right? Now in the game, there's eventually a lot of areas, right? And all we have to try to go around or dispose of a bunch of clickers. And so those areas are very tense and all that. But this area, what made it particularly tense, so for me, was I don't think I was really paying attention to what they were saying in the game, because because you have your flashlight, right? And so they do say kind of early on, as I've played, the game multiple times afterwards, where the clickers they can't see, so you can have your flashlight on as you're trying to wander around. You just don't want to be loud. But I didn't know that, and so I end up in this really dark kind of area, right, in this underground subway area, and so I'm maneuvering around through there, and like I said, right now, I didn't know that you could have your flashlight on. And so I had my flashlight off, and I'm like slowly crawling around, right, and all, where everything is super dark, and you can barely make out the silhouettes of these clickers and all. And you can hear them and all, right? They sound very disturbing. And because, again, you've already had some encounters with clickers before and all, but this is the first area where there's a whole bunch of them. I'm pretty sure it's the first area you encounter where there's a whole bunch of them, because I think there was an area right before that where you're fighting the runners, right, which are like they're kind of the crazed zombies, but they're not quite clickers yet, and then maybe there was like one or two clickers. This is where there's a whole bunch of them, and so I'm slowly sneaking around, right, and I'm trying to be super quiet, so I'm barely nudging along on the analog stick, and again, everything is super dark, so I'm just barely making out the silhouettes of these clickers, so it took me a few tries, because until I got the hang of how to do this part, but and then when they catch you and all, it's kind of like they get like this kind of gross animation of when they're biting on your neck and all that, and it kind of cuts away before it gets really bad. But so finally I ended up beating the spot here, but it was just very tense, right? And where I'm like slowly crawling along this whole section here, the whole time not knowing that I could have had my flashlight on, and it would have made things a bit easier. But just the way I ended up playing it that way, and then and all, I just remember being it was just a very tense moment, and I actually really loved it at the time. I was like, this is actually really creepy and really amazing, and it made me fall in love with that game so much and all, which unexpectedly, I kind of played it wrong, I guess you can say, but it was just a very tense scene and all that, and absolutely loved it. But now when I play that game, I definitely have my flashlight on during that section there. But yeah, just a great moment that I made creepier on my own. But yeah, The Last of Us, that's a great game. I absolutely love that game. Before I get to my number one, though, as I've been talking here, I made the list earlier, and I completely forgot one thing that as I've been going through this list, I'm just remembering now in real time. So I'll kind of put this as an honorable mention, but honestly would have probably fit into my top 10 list. I'm just, as I'm kind of thinking about this in real time, I'm not sure which one I would remove in replace of this one. But basically it's the PT demo that came out on the PlayStation 4, I think roughly 2014. So for those of you that don't know, so around this time, Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, so they were still with Konami, and there was an announcement made that they were getting involved to try to do like a Silent Hill game. It wasn't really quite sure what direction they were going to go and all, but they released this demo that was supposedly, like, people weren't quite sure if this is part of the game or if this just sort of like to try to give a feel of what the game's going to be. But all this demo is you're going through this corridor, like a hallway in a house, and you just go down and then you take a right turn, and then you can go, I think, downstairs, and then that's it. And then it just keeps repeating itself over and over. So there's not a whole lot of play mechanics here on this. But what made it creepy, though, was that so every time you're going through this section here, and so what makes it creepy is that as you're going down this corridor, everything is changing on you. And so whenever you keep going down, something new happens, and that's the creepy part there, right? And all, and then I won't spoil it, and all it'd be kind of hard for anyone to play this again because they delisted it from the PlayStation Store. I mean, really, the only thing I think you can authentically play this is if you were able to find a PlayStation 4 that someone still had it on their hard drive, which is pretty ridiculous. I don't know why they would do this. Well, actually, I think I know why now that I think about it. I would say at the very least, if you don't know what this is and everything, watch a YouTube video on it. Because again, there's not a whole lot of play mechanics, so you're not really missing out on too much if you don't play it yourself. But just watch a YouTube video on it and all, and it's pretty frightening. but very frightening. And yeah, just some of the stuff that happens on it and all as you as you keep going through this hallway, it's pretty disturbing and would have been it's inspired of some things because I know that there's like somebody made like a version of this game on that what's it called, the Dreams game, I think on the PlayStation 4 or 5. And I think maybe like people have been able to do some kind of modded version of this PT demo. Again, if you've never heard about it, definitely look it up and at least on YouTube, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's pretty frightening and kind of gives you a glimpse of maybe what could have been, right? Because that's an interesting combo of Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro doing something horror related. I mean that would have been interesting. But I think part of the reason why it might have been delisted is, well, first of all, Hideo Kojima's fallout with Konami. That might have been a part of it. Maybe there's some kind of a license deal with Konami, PlayStation. I don't know. And then also there's a certain appearance of a character at the end of this demo that it has the likeness of a certain actor. And, again, sometimes, because there's rights involved with that and all, that might have been a part of it as well, too. But anyways, like I said, very cool. So, yeah, that's definitely on its own right and all, definitely a scary thing. Excuse me. But for me, my number one scariest thing, though, in a video game that I've come across or moment is Silent Hill 2. Oh man, Silent Hill 2 is my overall favorite like horror kind of game. Now the scary moments in this game though are a lot more psychological, right? And then it also has to do with like the overall lore of the story, what's going on, and a plot that you have to sort of uncover its themes and everything until you figure out really what's going on, right? The meaning behind everything and all. And a lot of these enemies in the game are, there's a reason for why they look the way they look and all that. The game is excellent and it's an awesome game to sort of delve deep into the overall themes and lore of this game. But one of the more frightening characters, not only in this game, but just overall in video games and really like in any media, is Pyramid Head. So if you've never played a Silent Hill game, there's a good chance you've probably at least heard about Pyramid Head, as he was in one of the Silent Hill movies that came out, some years ago. And so I think a lot of people know about Pyramid Head, but they maybe don't understand quite what he's all about and all. And so aside from just looking frightening and all, um, the character, what he's all about is basically, what I understand of the character. Because again, I've seen a lot of stuff on this game and all, and some of the stuff is still kind of goes over my head and all. But basically, he's kind of like a manifestation of the main character James Sutherland's like sexual frustration, I guess you can say. And he is a very menacing looking character. I mean, he's kind of like this big, tall, muscular guy kind of looking thing, but he's got like this huge, like pyramid thing shaped, rusted looking dome for a head, and he carries around this huge like cleaver blade of some sort that he drags along on the ground, making it, giving it that grindy sound. So he's a very frightening character to look at, right? When you first encountered this character, though, in Silent Hill 2, at least I think it's the first time you encounter him, is so you're going through this apartment complex fairly somewhat early in the game, and you're going through room. Everything's really dark, and all. You just barely have your little flashlight to sort of, give you a bit of light of what's going on. But you end up making it into this room. And as you come into this room, you're hearing some noises, and because you've already been coming across some mannequins that look like females, only they're kind of weird, where they have like legs, obviously legs, right, where they're supposed to be, but then also legs coming up from the top. So again, a lot of the design of these enemies and all is there for a reason. So in the game, James has a lot of sexual frustration and all that he has due to his wife getting terminally ill. And so he's trying to deal with it, not only in his wife passing, but also just a lot of the frustrations he's having with that. And so sounds like he probably wasn't the best husband to her. And so he's in this town and all, facing a lot of regret for things that he's done in the past, which you don't know immediately, right? All of this plays out later on in the end. But this Pyramid Head, so basically, he's kind of again a manifestation of James's sexual frustrations. So when you first meet this Pyramid Head, you come into this room, again, this apartment room, and you look over in the kitchen area, and so you see this again, this fucking huge, like guy, very grotesque looking with this big old pyramid dome shaped head, and he has like those weird grimy like mannequins around it because everything is all very grimy and and look has a very grimy look to it, everything, and he's doing what can only be described as violating these mannequins. And I mean, the way it's animated and the sounds that are coming out from these mannequins and all, it sounds as disturbing as I'm describing it. Because what I mean by violating is that he's, well, let's just say forcing himself upon these mannequins. And it's truly disturbing because you get like a quick view of it, right? And because again, one of the things that makes the Silent Hill 2 game very effective, and I'm talking about the original PlayStation 2 version, is that everything is really dark, right? So whatever you can see, there's a lot of like shadows and darkness around it. So, and again, everything has a very grimy, grindy look to everything and all. And so you just kind of get like this quick, like, vision of like, what the fuck did I just see? And so then your character James goes into the closet that's nearby, and he's just sort of, and so the closet has like these oh, I don't know how you describe it, um like these horizontal like wood slabs, that kind of go across it where you can still kind of see, and so he's kind of peeking out, still looking at what is going on. And so then eventually the pyramid head stops, as I think he gets a sense of where you're at, and so then James kind of starts shooting him through the closet, and then eventually pyramid head walks out. And so that whole scene, when it plays out, I remember the first time I saw it, and I would have been, what, 21 years old. And so I'm looking at this, I was like, what the fuck did I just see? What is this game? And but it's very like, it's very dark, it's very disturbing, but it kind of but the overall like mystery of what's going on and everything keeps luring you in, right, to this very messed up world. And at some point I'm going to need to try to talk about Silent Hill 2, just because there is so much to this game and all that is very, it is just, it's a very deep story, and I really love it for the overall like exploration of human nature that it goes into. But again, that'll be a topic for some other time and all. But yeah, I mean, that scene is just highly disturbing and all, especially once you finally figure out later on, right, when it all starts making sense of what Pyramid Head represents. And so when you think about it, right, so he's a manifestation of James's sexual frustration, so it's almost like him in a very beastly form, right, and all just taking advantage of like weak sort of like feminine figures. And so kind of shows like how messed up James is as well too. And I mean, there's been a few things that I've seen in, whether if it's video games or movies and all, that I was like very disturbed by and all. And again, I'm someone that I have a pretty high tolerance of things that I'm going to be disturbed by, where I don't, I'm not easily offended and all. But that was one scene there and all where I was like, this is kind of messed up, um, and it reminded me and all of another scene that really kind of, even to this day, just frightened me. And probably didn't help that I watched it when I was a kid, but it was in, if anybody's seen the movie The Shining, from Stanley Kubrick and Jack Nicholson, from back in the day. So a little bit of a spoiler on this movie here is, so there's a section in the movie where the main character Jack is going after his wife and chasing her down this some stairs, and then as she's running down these stairs trying to get away from him, all of a sudden she kind of peeks into one of the hotel room doors, and there's like this quick scene that you get a glimpse of, and you don't really know the context of it or anything, but it's like this old guy that's sitting on the edge of a bed, and then in front of him, kind of like kneeling down before him, is somebody in a weird looking bear costume, and they just kind of like look at you, or at the lady character that's running down the stairs, and then the way the song plays and everything, and then the camera zooms in and on their face and all, and it's just all done really quick, and she's looking at it like, what the hell is this? And she keeps running away, right, and all, because she's got this her crazed husband for chasing after, and she sees this. That scene right there, I remember when I was a kid, I was like, what the fuck is that? And so this scene from Silent Hill 2 kind of gave me that same feel, like, what did I just see? Like, just kind of like permanently gets implanted in your brain and kind of traumatizes you in a way. But for that reason, there, I mean, it's definitely stands out as one of the more disturbing, scary moments I've ever seen in not only in a video game but just any media in general. And yeah, very disturbing. Uh, how I mean, the way it's recreated in Silent Hill 2, the remake, it's done pretty well. It's I mean, if that's your first version of the of how you're going to play that game, I feel like you could probably get a similar experience about it. And I say that if you've never known anything about Silent Hill 2 in the past, don't know anything about the story and all that, and your first take is the Silent Hill 2 remake, I still feel you'll get kind of the overall like shock value of that scene right there. But I feel like it's done better in the PlayStation 2 version. That's just what I think. But the remake is still excellent. I still really enjoy the remake though. And there was actually another scene too, also in the remake that I don't think was in the original one that did kind of scare me with Pyramid Head. So there's a section where you're so same thing, right? You're in this apartment complex, you're kind of exploring all, and now if you played the original one before, you was like, all right, I know that somewhere around here I'm going to meet Pyramid Head, right? In that scene that I just described earlier. But there's this one section though in the remake where I'm walking down this hallway, and then all of a sudden there's like at the end of the hallway, it's really dark, but then there's like these like almost like jail bars that are blocking in the hallway, so you can't go past. And then as you start getting closer to it, you just see like a figure standing there, and as you get closer, you're like, oh fuck, that's Pyramid Head, and he's just kind of there standing, right? Just kind of breathing a little bit and all. I can't remember if there's like a sound effect or anything. And he's just kind of there. And I think there's like a little bit of a red light that gives him a little bit of, illumination as to you can kind of make out, his figure and all. And that part did kind of shock me. I was like, oh shit, I was not expecting that. But yeah, Pyramid Head, very disturbing character. He's definitely became a fan favorite, and you see him in some other things too. Also, like I think he was in Dead by Daylight. I think. Or whatever that game is, maybe even in Fortnite for all I know. And then there's also he's an unlockable Astrobot in Astrobot. Although he kind of looks cute in that one there though, but definitely not a cute character though in the real version. He's highly disturbing. But yeah, that very very disturbing thing or character. But yeah, that was a creepy little venture down memory lane on some of the scary moments in video games. But let me know what your scary moments are or scary moments that you've come across in video games that maybe I didn't point out here, or your take on them. But yeah, that's what I got for this episode. Hope you have a fun and safe Halloween, and see you in the next.